Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. My name's Ray. I'm part of the JLC team, and with me are two colleagues that are become more than just colleagues. They're dear friends, and I'm going to just take a few seconds and let them introduce themselves to you. So, Vince, start us off.
Well, good morning, Colleen, and good afternoon, Ray, and to those who join us. My name is Vince Starks, and I'm the junior member of the JLC team. I've been with the company about 3 years. I am a retired naval officer. I spent 30 years in the Navy, and my industry was the healthcare and executive leadership in that space. And so I have a lot of experience in the DoD space, dealing with people and challenges and problems. And so I'm very excited to join today in today's conversation.
Welcome. So good to have you, Colleen.
Absolutely. And it's an honor and a pleasure to work with my buddy Vince. But when he said junior, he didn't necessarily mean an age. I just wanted to clarify that straight out of the gate. Anyway, just teasing. I've been working with the Jorgensen Learning Center for, I want to say, what, been 13, 14 years. It just continues to roll on and multiple different ways. It's been a learning journey for me. Right now I'm the COO and also one of the JLC associates that supports executives across the country in really helping their teams achieve their desired results. And welcome, everyone.
Well, thank you. This is an opportunity to be as interactive as you choose to make it as listeners. And you're giving up 45 minutes of your day. And Colleen and I talked about setting the stage in this manner. And then once you get a chance to make a note in the chat box, and that's what I would hope you would do, we have an idea about what to talk about around innovation. We want to meet your expectation. So if this 45 minutes was really worth your while, what would you get out of it? What's something you want answered, or what would you get out of it? Or if you got a burning question about innovation, please say it. Or if you say, the three of you, I'd love it if you would talk a little bit about X. So if you could just take about 60 seconds and we will lean back and do the same thing. Think about our expectations for this. I will come back and demonstrate the learning container. So right now, this really went well for you. Really was worth your time. What would you get out of it, or what question would you like answered? We'll wait for about 60 seconds, and then we'll come back.
Nice. We're getting some people typing into the chat box. Thank you, and keep them coming.
Nice. A few more seconds. So this chat box is open to you going forward. If there's something else that stimulates your thinking while we're responding to some of your expectations, please feel free to chat in again. Right now, I'm going to, oh, thank you. We got even more coming in. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, see, I love that particular phrase. Good. So some of what you're asking may unfold in this first little bit. When any of us work, when the three of us work either in a virtual environment or when there's a live session, and we have all done both over the last few weeks. we always start with creating a learning container. First, for myself, how do I show up in learning? And then for the team. And so I'm going to let Colleen talk about some things that we do to set the stage for that. And then Vince, of course, add on additional things that you've seen yourself do, seen others do. It almost feels like because we are so concerned about time, and I admit time is the currency of this century right now, time's a big deal, that we have a tendency to launch into conversation. So this is going to be Colleen and Vince talking a little bit about some things we do to set the stage. And by that, what we mean from the literature especially is to create a temporary learning container. And then I'll react a little bit to what they're saying as we go forward, and we'll start to respond to some of your queries as they happen. So who'd like to go for Colleen? You want to start? What are some things that you do to set the stage for that learning container?
Sure, absolutely. Well, just one more thing in regards to the literature. I think it's important to recognize that it states that if you don't get people's voices in the room and engaged within the first 2 minutes, people begin to lean back and kind of check out, if you will. So if you really want this innovative environment, this creative container, right, this learning container, just be cognizant and aware that you really want to engage people quickly. So one of the things you can do is exactly what Ray just modeled, right? We came with our thinking about how we wanted to show up in this meeting and what we wanted to discuss. Absolutely, we're going to bring that forward, but we didn't begin with that. So a way to surface the thinking and get people engaged is to do exactly what we did. What would you like to learn about innovation? And what are some questions or some concerns you have about this particular topic? Anything like that. I think our tendency is we show up with our own thinking and we have an idea what we want to talk about, and we could just launch with that. However, if we truly want to create a learning container and engage people quickly, we're going to surface what it is you'd like to know, and then we're going to modify and adjust our conversations throughout our time together to make sure that we hit the mark and we hit those topics and those specific things that you'd like to learn.
So Colleen is just magnificent. So there's two edges here. People always want to know, what are the tactics? What are the methods? How do you do this? If we don't understand the theory that is guiding the practices, then we tend to live at somewhat of a more superficial level. So voices in the room. I am as high a number as you can create on the Myers-Briggs, an introvert. And introverts, we're just quiet. And if there's any school people with me right now, this is something my teachers have absolutely loved when I would share this with them. An introverted kid can sit in a virtual or regular classroom for up to almost 30 hours and never say anything. Now, that's somewhat of a problem because the natural way we learn is through conversation. It's not the only way, but it is the natural way we learn. So if we don't get everybody's voices in the room early, the learning container will actually be somewhat sideways. We'll have some people in and some people out. And of course, being an introvert, I'm happy to let the extroverts talk and run and do whatever they want to say. And then I will, to Colleen's point, lean back and not stay engaged in the conversation. So this first activity is to remind all of us, me included, my work is about how do I initiate and sustain a learning container moving forward. Voices in the room, absolutely critical. Thank you for that, Colleen. Vince, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think Colleen hit that right on the head. And the next thing that I would do is, as opposed to how do you know you got the voices in the room, is you would do what we call close the loop, right? And so you asked people to write down some thoughts. And what I would do in closing the loop is I want to ensure that we have some shared meaning of what has been proposed. And so I would propose that maybe if you allow me, Ray, I'd like just to read off a couple of the thoughts that were shared from the guests in the room, because I wanted to close the loop. So Bob shared that what he would like to get out of this is, he asked, what are the best practices to create the optimal conditions to spark innovation? And so it's a great feedback, Bob. Bart stated that he wanted to look at innovation and as a means, it looks like, to be proactive to problem solving. And so, Bart, I hope that I understood your comment correctly. If it didn't, please feel free to correct us. And then another comment that came in that said, oh, here's one from Kevin. Kevin shared, when there's a passion and belief in a process or even a specific tool that is needed in the business operations to enhance innovation. So that's just some of the feedback that we heard that people would like to learn. And what I was attempting to model was closing the loop to ensure that what people said is what I heard, so we can develop shared meaning.
And to just add on to that, when we do this live virtually or live in person, right, we will then do something very fundamental to the development of a learning container. We will acknowledge what somebody said. We will confirm we understood to the way they wanted me to understand, right? And then we will respond respectfully. It is the simplest of all the tools that are in our backpack. And one of the ones I learned when I was studying this work with the folks who created the Dialogos Institute, the Society for Organizational Learning, it never, ever ended. It was a constant practice that I acknowledge what the human being said, I confirm I understood, and respond respectfully. Now, this is about bringing your best self forward, because Vince might have said something that I thought was insane. I need to be able to suspend my certainty so that I can actually understand his perspective. This is truly, at some level, what we've created here in this first few minutes, saying let's get a learning container in place. Well, a lot of that's working on myself. If Colleen or Vince says something that just, triggers me, stimulates me, oh, I don't agree with that, I may stop listening to understand them, and I will move towards telling them what my position is and why I want them to agree with me. These are inhibitors to any kind of creative or innovative conversation. And this is truly about working on self. Okay, what are my mental models? And what is it about Colleen that she's saying that I don't like that, And this, by the way, is exceedingly human. And if you surface this as being human and expected, people can recognize that what they're doing is they're bringing the essence of who they are to the conversation through their opinions and their attitudes, their beliefs, and their biases. This is the chance for you to start to really practice the very first of the disciplines that we teach, which is listen to understand. Colleen, what did you hear me say, and how did that land on you?
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing you talk about is specifically, it's how, as an individual, do I show up in the conversation? And really that how I show up impacts my interactions and the team's ability to collaborate. So the first place I want to focus on is myself. And one of the first guidelines you laid on the table is listening to understand, because many times we limit, without even perhaps knowing it, we limit our own self because we stop listening, because I already have a preconceived idea, I already have my ideas, and I want to advocate for those. So a big piece of innovation is recognizing how I show up, not necessarily not sharing my ideas, but how can I ensure that I'm listening to understand to others, so I'm open to their perspective.
So this is magnificent. So one of our teachers, two of our teachers, were Donald Schoen and Chris Augeris. And they were the ones that brought forward the idea of theory of action. In doing so, they taught us something called the ladder of inference, which is when I see a situation, I go up my ladder to a conclusion, and then I tend to take action on that conclusion. If you haven't studied the ladder of inference and you'd like to learn about it, we have a podcast about it, plus there's some writing on the website. Here's the part that resonated with me so deeply as Colleen was speaking. Every conclusion, Ray, I have ever made, every conclusion, and every decision that I've ever made is based on missing and or faulty data. By the way, doesn't mean I'm a bad guy. If there's a 911, I'm going to make a decision and run forward. If I recognize, though, that my ability to come to a conclusion, ladder of inference, I go up my ladder to a conclusion and then expected action. If I lean back and I go, Vince, I need to know your perspectives on this. I'm leaning this way. I'm starting to think this is what we should do. This is what this new project could look like moving forward. I'm wondering if other people see this differently. And I would pivot right to the people in the room. Again, if we've established a learning container and keep acknowledging people and building a safe space for people to talk with us, that other wisdom can come out. So one of the greatest gifts, I think, in this space of innovation is how do we tap into the collective wisdom in the room? Well, you've just seen a couple of things that allow that to happen, and there's a few more to come. The ability for me to not become polarized because Vince doesn't see it the way I do, or Colleen doesn't see it the way I do. What that does is a subconscious response. She doesn't know what she's talking about. He's wrong about that. And all of a sudden, my ability to keep the container, this learning container, alive is limited. It is a limiting factor that would stop me from engaging in a way that we could actually produce that collective wisdom, because that's what we're after, collective wisdom. And we will talk a little bit about how to create a little discomfort to get us there, but that's what we're after. Vince, what are you thinking and feeling right now?
So Ray, I actually just want to take a pause. The point that you just delivered is directly correlates to a question that was posed by one of our audience members. So Tim wrote, even if you feel like you've responded respectfully, how do you overcome if the other party still takes offense at your response? Perhaps you disagree with their idea. So you were just touching and unfolding that, and that question just came in. So I thought that I was thinking about the question: how do we react and respond to?
I love it.
I remember.
Yeah. So this actually happened in real time for Vince and I. I was hanging around with him when he was on active duty, and he said, "How do I deal with the colorful language person who doesn't see things the way that I see it?" Right? And I said, the first thing you notice, the first thing you do is you acknowledge, confirm you understood, respond respectfully, stop. But here is a small but powerful tool that the three of us have put in our backpacks and have shared with those that we consult directly. So Colleen, I am noticing that you feel very strongly about moving in direction A. And I'm wondering if you're hearing other possibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, these gerunds, the noticing and wondering, are very powerful. Somebody could still say, no, BS, Ray, I think we should go with A. A is the direction we could get that. The point is, if the space is becoming safer and safer because of the way you are practicing the disciplines that we've shared with you, these disciplines of a learning conversation, which I admittedly stole from the disciplines of dialogue at MIT and at the Center for Dialogos. We stole them, modified them slightly, and tried to put them in practice, given complete, accolades to the people who taught us this stuff. So the first one, listen to understand, and you can always notice and wonder. That is really powerful. The second one, and this is harder if the space doesn't feel so safe to you, but the ability to truly speak from the heart. That gives you, this is me talking, and these two folks have put up with me for years. So I will say, okay, I have an opinion about this, and I'm happy that it's not the opinion we follow together, but let me share what my opinion is and why I'm holding it. Once again, it is you inviting that container that we're trying to create to respond authentically, a bit vulnerably, to take a Brene Brown concept and put it right in the middle of the learning conversation, we're going to be vulnerable in a learning conversation. And somehow we have to make this safe enough that disparate ideas can be held. So one of the teachers said to us, the essence of learning conversations or dialogue is to speak to the center of things, not to the sides of things, because people always have sides. What are we trying to accomplish? What is the centerpiece that we're trying to accomplish? And recognizing there will be sides, and if I can notice what those sides are and wonder about them, and if people are truly in a space of reflection and inquiry, again, Chris Auger's, Donald Schoen, reflection, inquiry, they go hand in hand. I'm reflecting on what I heard you say, Vince, and I'm kind of wondering about it a little bit. Do I have this right? Or is there more that you want to give to me? These phrases, language is so important in creating safe space so we can truly innovate. So notice what we've done so far. Build a learning container. Don't jump past it because it's going to take a couple of minutes. And believe it or not, you should see this when it's with people that really are learning and practicing. One of the ways I do it is I start off a meeting, a virtual meeting in this fashion. What's top of mind for you that's distracting you? And what are you going to do to put it over your shoulder so you can come back here and get to learning? Another simple one is, what do you do to keep yourself in a space of learning? Any of those little queries at the start of a meeting, and they take moments to take care of. It allows you to, on a regular basis, stop and create a learning container. P.S. This is not pixie dust. This is something that we need to do time and time and time again. It becomes a disciplined practice that creates more and more safe space. So if we're not meeting the mark on any of the queries that you gave us, please give us another one. And let me do the setup again. Every voice in the room, get people checked in. Always practice the learning conversation guidelines. Number 1, listen to understand. Number 2, speak from the heart. Number 3, suspend your ideas, suspend your certainty. You're all probably way too young to remember this. I grew up in New York City, and in New York City, the apartment houses and the places where people were very close to each other. So they didn't have dryers like we have today to dry our clothes. So they put out rope that went out on a little spindle, right? And they would put the piece of whatever clothing it was, and they would push it out there. Then they put another one and push it out there. So it's out in the air. That was David Bohm's analogy about suspending your assumptions, suspending your thinking, and suspending your disagreements. All of a sudden, they're there, they're aired. People can see them. That idea of suspension, suspending certainty, absolutely critical. Colleen, back to you. What are you thinking and feeling as we're jumping forward to these, trying to respond to what we heard so far? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that sense of suspending certainty so you can be open to new ideas. And boy, man, sounds easy, but a lot of times it isn't. And to Tim's point, who talked about, when people are disagreeing with you, I think it's really important to really focus on that you disagreeing with an idea, not the person. I think when people begin to take things personally, then they're going to show up in a different way and respond in a different way. And so my invitation is, as you mentioned, taking some of the time at the beginning of each and every meeting, because developing safe space is a process. And then when you're having these types of conversations, because really we need to pivot and shift, we don't know what we need to do. We need to have these candid conversations. Now you've been working on safe space. It's not something you can just wake up and go, all right, today's the day. We're having safe space in our conversations, and we're really going to have an innovative conversation. I think it's really important to recognize you're consistently having these conversations, consistently talking about the importance of, we can disagree with an idea, but let's not necessarily disagree with the individual.
Yeah, that's very nice. And we can see things differently. I think that's really critical. We can see things differently. We don't have to see them the same. And the richness of the conversations from people seeing things differently allows us to delve into, wow, what is it about you that makes you think that way? But here's what I want to share with all of you. I have a CEO of a mid-level company, probably Fortune 450, 500, something like that. And on his desk, he has behind his nameplate, it says a little query that I gave him years and years and years ago. What is it about me that makes me feel this way or see it this way? It is a constant introspection. Remember, I'm reflecting and inquiring about how have I come to that conclusion? And what am I missing? If I really subscribe to the fact that everything that I've thought about and came to conclusions about is based on missing and or faulty data, then what's causing me to be so passionate about this particular position? This is really important for us to do lots of personal reflection. Laying in my office are journals everywhere. My grandchildren all want them because they want to see what I've written. I don't want to give them to them because I don't always use the nicest language in my journals. But they're all over the place, and it's a place for me, it's a space for me to be safe and write down, what are you really thinking right now about whatever it is we're working on? Safe space, check in, build a learning container, and then practice the disciplines. I gave you a couple. Listen to understand, speak from the heart, suspension, suspend certainty. Next one, very important. Vince does this beautifully. I've seen him do it in multiple meetings. Hold space for difference. The leader's easy thing for the leader to say. Hey, gang, anybody see this differently? Anybody have another perspective? Is there something we might be missing? Any of those kinds of questions are so, so powerful. And the last one is, especially when you're doing something that feels unusual, new, creative, innovative, slow down. Because you'll watch people start to pile on to an idea that we should grab onto and run with. Slow down. Listen for understanding. Speak from the heart. Suspend certainty. Hold space for difference. Slow down. Powerful ways to get yourselves into a space where the learning container can actually produce necessary innovation. Let me stop right there. Then it's back to you. Any other responses from our chat gang or anything that you're thinking right now?
So no other responses from the chat so far, but I would say that you answered you tickled my funny bone with this last section. And what you really described and telling people how to approach the meetings, how to do check-ins, how to set the stage, use the learning conversation guidelines. If I were a leader, what I would say if I wanted to put a bow around this is those actions, if you were to take those actions as a leader, then what you're doing is you're going on a journey. And that journey, by creating that safe space, by creating that environment, that's what leads you to innovation.
Brilliant.
Right? It's not we're gonna innovate today. It's doing those things that set the conditions for your team and for your people. That process in and of itself generates the energy that you need. And if you do that consistently and intentionally, it will lead you to the path of innovation. So as you were talking, that's what I was summarizing in my mind.
So it's just really, really good. So here's a mistake that I have made. That I would gather a group of people together when I was in a formal leadership position and say, okay, need to work on some innovation and creativity today. They don't go, about what? So to the elegant way that Vince just laid that on the table, innovation is very important, and we need to do it on the journey towards an end state. So the end state is not innovation. Innovation is a practice that unfolds as we're going upon this journey to get to that end state. And, there's too many concepts to lay on the table all at once. However, if I don't change my practical knowledge, I'm not going to be able to change what I do tomorrow. This is all about, and what I'm offering you to those listening and to myself, is to refine my practice so I get better at doing this. This is, so I love music and I am a musician, and what I'm doing right now is similar to what I do on stage, okay? It is, in a sense, a performance. At the end of this conversation today, the three of us will stop and collectively do an after-action review. What was our intention today? To eat the mail, is that the right phrase, Colleen?
Answer the mail. There'll be no
So
eating of paper.
we don't eat the mail. We answer the mail. So whatever you said to us, we're trying to answer the mail. We'll do our best. And then we will stop and say, okay, what did we do to answer the mail? What did we learn about our process of answering the mail? And what will we do differently next time? This is the heart and soul of personal mastery and getting better. So if you come hear our band and you say, would you play this song? Probably we could. It won't be the best rendition of that song because now Ray and other members of the band need to work on my personal mastery. What is the lick in that song that everybody remembers? What is the piece? I need to go back and reflect on what I did and inquire on what can I do to improve my process in holding a meeting, hosting a meeting, having a conversation, playing an instrument. This is about a continuous personal development. And Peter Senge would say that is the discipline of personal mastery. I must add a piece, okay? So you're probably going, wow, this is in some of you may be saying this is interesting. Some of you may be saying this is BS, but if you don't say it's BS and you actually find it interesting, there is a concept called creative tension, which means this is where I am, and if you could visualize a rubber band stretching upward, this is where I would like to be, where I ought to be. There is tension there. Now, too much tension, too much, right? So on your journey, there will be little milestones that you'll come to. I want to get to this milestone. Oh, then there's another, then another, and it continues on your journey. If you get, this is a little bit like the three bears, too hot, too cold, just right. Creative tension needs to be just right. And it's different. Creative tension for Vince is different than creative tension for Colleen. So the only ones that can tell me what their creative tension needs to be, Vince and Colleen. So when someone's learning, and this is all about learning to move to another level on their journey, move to another level on their innovation, we need to be able to recognize that creative tension really matters. Colleen, what are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, I'm just really thinking about the creative tension piece. And one of the things that I've shared with clients is as a leader with a team, one of the things leaders do is initiate and sustain creative tension with every individual in their team by asking them, and getting an understanding of where are they now, what's their current reality, and what are they working on, What is their desired future state? It could be individually, and it also can be collectively. And I think that's the biggest key. We've talked a little bit already about shared meaning. And I think it's so critical to understand, what's Vince working on and how is that contributing to the JLC team collectively as we continue to grow the business moving forward. So I think having an understanding of creative tension for the individuals and a shared understanding of what is the desired future state for the team will help us stay focused on mission, will help us really start to think about things in an innovative way.
I really love that, Colleen. So in my own world, of my own personal mastery on different things that I do. I'm going to make a sentence and you guys think about it. Contentment. This is good enough. Contentment is the enemy of progress and innovation. And we have to be very careful that people aren't saying, well, you're the innovator, you're the COO of it, whatever. I don't know. They probably have some title around innovation. You're the one supposed to be innovating. It's not me. Therefore, I lean back into my comfort. And all of us want homeostasis. We all want that. So this ability to build these kinds of conversations where you collectively reflect, inquire, look for new ways, that is a critical component on this journey towards an end state where innovation is so important and so wanted. On a previous conversation we had with one of our other associates, when before the iPhone was developed, Steve Jobs said, I don't want to do that. We have an iPod. It plays music. What do we need a telephone for? Why should we confuse them? Why should we put them together? What he was doing was challenging the possibility of doing something like that. And he did it in a way, his own way, where it stimulated conversation about, wait a minute, this is a possibility. What could we do to make it more appealing? What can we do to make this really significant to those in the world that use our devices already? So it is not unusual for people to say, I don't agree with that. I'm not sure that's what we should do. That's a call to action. Let us get together, continue to collaborate, and think about on our journey towards success. What would we need to do? What innovation would help us move forward on our journey? Now, if I don't have any creative tension, then I just lean back into my stovepipe and I just stay there. And that's okay. I'm not judging anybody for doing that. People retire doing that. That's what they choose to do. No stress, no muss. I'm just staying right here and moving forward. That was great, Colleen. Vince, anything else from the gang out there?
Yeah, we got a note from my good friend Tony Torres. He wrote, innovation is the way to get to the end state. And innovation could be more about adding to the scenario, new thinking equals new learning, which will allow a future, new, different end state to happen. So thank you for that comment, Tony.
Yeah, I couldn't add anything to that, Tony. That was great. That's exactly right. As long as the space is safe, and that's constant. It's like, first of all, acknowledging you, making sure we got you right, Tone, and making sure that we continue to move forward in these spaces so that people can bring their best self forward. That's really want. Bring your best self forward and do your best to contribute, even if you're the big time introvert like me. Contribute. We need your thinking. We need collective wisdom, and we can get forward from there. Well, we're just about out of time. Let me stop here for a minute because Colleen, unless you have another question from the audience, Vince, I'm going to let her do her little summary.
I do. And this actually is a nice tie up one of the points. So cool. Deb Thompson wrote, contentment seems to be the enemy of creative tension. So Deb, thank you very much.
Okay, Deb, I love you. I never thought of saying it that way. I'm going to probably write that down and keep it. I think that's absolutely beautiful. Right. And who puts the best creative tension on somebody? I put it on myself. Right. Nobody knows. You see the guitars behind me? They look nice. They're really not worth much unless I sit down and play them, right? And begin to figure out how to make the next gig better than the last gig. Oh my God, Deb, that was really good. I love it. Oh.
And I'll add to that. You know what it sounds like in a meeting? That's not my swim lane. Vince, you're the subject matter expert, man. You just tell me what to do. That's under your role and responsibilities. Sorry. So, and you know what's so funny is you hear that all the time, and that is contentment, and that is me abdicating my responsibility of even being innovative or being creative. It's me just leaning back and letting somebody else carry the water.
Colleen, we just did a whole series on adaptive leadership. And when I get stuck in my comfort lane and I feel like there is some tension, I simply shift to, all right, boss, tell me what to do. Turn to power and authority, give me an answer to this. When probably they don't know. Because if it truly is an adaptive challenge, power and authority will not be able to solve it. Only the people can solve it. We have to mobilize those folks to get after that particular adaptive challenge. That was great, Colleen. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right, Miss Colleen, you got us. Now, close us out. What's the first one?
Yeah, just the four kind of outcomes that we really just kind of chatted about here today. One was the end state isn't innovation. Innovation happens along the way. And I think we talked a lot about that one as far as it is a process, right? It's not something that we just do. Today's our innovative chat. We are constantly working on that because it is a process that gets us to that end state. Second one is disciplined collaborative reflection produces a generative solution. Disciplined collaborative reflection produces a generative solution. And
let me hold you there for a second. So when we say reflection, everyone I've ever said that to, and this is me not doing it well, they keep thinking, you mean I should reflect? Well, yeah, you should. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I think it's very important so you can generate new ideas, and reflection and inquiry go together. The work we do at JLC is about collaborative reflection and inquiry. I want to underline that 100 times. Sometimes we don't recognize the power of the other minds in the room and so much breadth and depth that they can give us in a conversation. Thank you, Colleen. Sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely. I just want to say I put those in the chat box right there. And that's where innovation lives. I'm going to stay in my own thinking. That's my status quo. How am I really going to step outside of that and create a space for that collaborative conversation? So let's see. So we're on our third one, which is always analyze your mission instead of immediately moving towards action.
So stay there for a second again. So Vince, this was you and I talking about here's the situation, here's the complexities that we're facing. What are we missing? What are the questions that haven't yet been asked and answered? And then talk about what are some 6 ways we could move forward, not just one course of action. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to take something away from this, take this from Paula Underwood, one of my teachers. She was a Native American elder, and she said the Western mind has a tendency to do A or B, 1 or 2, this or that. She forced us in a meeting to come up with six movements forward, 6 explanations for the phenomenon. She said this is very indigenous. Cultures love to get beyond the 1 or 2. How do we make sure that we can get way beyond this or that, A or B, 1 or 2, and expand the thinking? That's when the collective wisdom can kick in beautifully.
Mhm.
What's the last one, Colleen?
Sure. And just another thing, I think that structure that you
Yeah.
just laid on the table as well is so helpful, because how many times, Vince, were you asked to make a decision? I'm going to give you this brief. Okay, boss, tell me what to do, make a decision. And it's like, all right, well, oh, I think maybe you need to do a course of action A, right? But you don't know, because how much information and situational awareness do you really have based upon this 5-slide, 15 minute brief?
Yeah. Yeah. And as you decide on a course of action, those are my innovative friends out there that are hanging out with us right now. We've come up with five or 6 different innovative ways forward. Every one of those will have intended and unintended consequences. Never forget that. Otherwise, we end up, let's do C. And we're running down the road with C, and then stuff happens. And we're like, I didn't expect that. That's because Vince and I did not analyze it well enough. We need to be able to identify those unintended consequences to any course of action that we produce as a way forward.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And our final one is kind of what Deb already kind of put in the chat, and that's comfort is the enemy of progress and innovation.
Yeah,
I think of progress and innovation.
I think we've hit them pretty well. So let's do this. My brother from another mother, teach me what's your biggest takeaway from this one today, and do the why part. Remember, meaning is everything, because when we change meaning, we change our being. I want to restate that. When we change meaning, we change our being. Everybody's really worried about change, right? The way we change is by actually shifting the meaning that we first got to a new meaning, which will then change our being. Anyway, Vince, what's your biggest takeaway from this one?
Yeah, so my biggest takeaway today was the importance of gender environment. If I'm a leader, if I'm leading a group and I'm the person responsible, creating that safe space is probably the most important thing to do, because everything that we've talked about was generating other voices of the team. And that's where the collective wisdom lies.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't focus so much on the word innovation. I would focus on what do I do as a leader to create the conditions and set the conditions so I can get the best thinking. And if I can do that, that will drive the team towards that outcome of innovation, which is what really resonated with me today. And I'm out.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Your contributions today were magnificent. Thank you, brother. My sister from another mister.
Yeah, I think, spot on to my compadre. It's creating that psychological safety and safe space is critical to collaboration, innovation. I mean, you just put the little buzz term in there. And so I think what resonated with me and my invitation to everyone who's listening is model the way as a leader. How can I show up in a space of learning and model the way to create this environment of psychological safety and trust? But the other pieces be explicit about what you're doing. I can't tell you how many times maybe you learn some of these new things and you're doing them. But people are going, okay, they might be able to feel and notice a difference. But I will add one more quick thing. Is ask and advertise. If you have taken one or two little pearls of wisdom from this, in your next meeting, be explicit about what you're doing and why. Because if you can lay that on the table, then they'll go, oh, well, Vince is leading this meeting a little bit differently. I thought, that he was just not feeling good today. He was a little off. So sometimes people don't know, because once again, homeostasis and being comfortable is what people just lean into. So if you're going to try something new, ask and advertise. This is what I'm trying. This is the reason why I really want to ensure we are collaborating to the best of our capabilities. So I'm going to be doing a check-in at the beginning to get voices in the room, to get people engaged. Going to get your feedback at the end to see what your thoughts are. So any of those types of things will once again help create this psychological safety. And I'm out.
Yeah, I can't say any better. Nicely stated. I will tell you, if we do this live and you come in and sit down in a meeting that you ask one of us to facilitate, within the first few seconds, you'll be up, moving, standing with someone else. Discomfort is useful in learning, because we end up, unfortunately, sitting back down in our comfort zone. Homeostasis kicks in. Opportunity to think way outside the particular dots that are in front of us is challenging. Give you a non-example as my closing story. 10, 12 years ago, I was asked to do this thing for this company that said, we want to do innovation. And I said, well, great. And then they were doing innovation. They're really doing good at it, and they liked it. They wanted an outsider to come in and watch them. I said, great. So I showed up early, as always. I'm always on Lombardi time. You're all probably too young to remember that. Show up 15 minutes early, ready to go, dressed, stretched, and ready to go. So I show up on Lombardi time, and I watch them arrive for the meeting. They go into like what looks like a little mailroom, but it's not. It's got all their coffee cups in different cubby holes. So they go in, they get their coffee cups, they fill them up with coffee and put the right fixings in them, and they come back into this long table and they sit down in a chair that obviously has been their chair for a long time. They put their coffee cup down, they open up their machines, they turn on things, and they make camp. And then the boss said, okay, let's talk about innovation. And I'm going, sorry, not going to happen, because you are just immediately creating this homeostatic environment where everybody is very comfortable. And the more comfortable I am, the less opportunity I have to actually think beyond and search for Vince and Colleen to give me more thoughts about the ideas that we're trying to start. Gosh, you guys have been great. Thank you for your interaction today. That was an upgrade that we put in after our last couple of webinars, and it felt good to me. I hope you liked it. If you enjoyed the way we did this interactive stuff today, please let us know. And as we debrief, we're going to decide for ourselves, how did we do? What could we do better? And if you have some upgrades, we'd love to hear about them. I'm Ray Jorgensen. This is the Go JLC Media environment, JLC Media. If you want to hear more about us, go to the website and hop in. You guys, thank you so much for taking one of those incredibly important assets, time, and using it with us today. Don't you love Vince and Colleen? All done. Take care, everyone. Have a great afternoon.